Good morning. I'm Professor Warner Woodworth, uh, talking to you from here in the United States. In this time of crisis with coronavirus, with death and suffering and illness as a pandemic ravages the people of the world, I want to bring a greeting from my home community here to my friends with the EURASIA conference and to my associates and partners and collaborators around the world. And I hope it's a message of opportunity, not just grief, a message of our capacity to create radical innovations and improve the world in this terrible time of COVID-19. I know many are struggling. I have friends that have died in 5 countries and several hundred of folks I know that are ill. Their families are worried. They're struggling without jobs. They've lost their income. The younger ones have lost their educational opportunities currently with universities and schools closed. And yet through all of this, I believe we have ways to improve and continue our capacity to learn and to create social change and to affect deep possibilities of a better world when this is all over. And I say this with portraits of some of our family ancestors behind me, along with this global map. Those ancestors struggled in the early 1900s, 1917, 18, when the great terrible flu ravaged the planet and killed nearly 50 million people. And these folks that are our pioneer ancestors were struggling in the mountains and valleys of Utah, here in the western United States, in the Rocky Mountains. And they went into quarantine, and they saw their churches closed, their schools closed, their jobs disappear. And yet they stayed strong. They worked to protect their children. They continued to learn. And now this community where I live is one of the ones across the country that has greater amounts of education and higher learning and degrees and new technologies and very small amounts of unemployment. And it happened because people had faith in themselves and faith in God. And they also realized they had to keep going. And in that process, they would have a better future. So I want to use them as a sort of backdrop to think about the challenges you and I face today as this catastrophe spreads globally with death, and not only death, but conflict, with hunger, with people protesting, with schools in decline, teachers being unemployed. The economies of both the regional, national, and global world around us are collapsing, and political debates, fights, disputes, accusations, falsehoods, lies abound. And we are seeing these social problems generate, unfortunately, psychological depression, racism, families disintegrating, violence and domestic abuse in the home. And I'm wanting to argue that we look at this upheaval, whether we're in Asia or Africa, Latin America, Europe, the United States, that we don't give up, that we address this head on, that this crisis will pass, and that we can do much now to serve and love others, protect our children, continue to learn and grow and develop. The numbers are somewhat problematic. 212 countries have confirmed cases of coronavirus, with 3.7 million as of 2 days ago. People who are sick. Globally, we're approaching 300,000 deaths. And that includes 49,000 cases in India, Brazil, where I've worked for many years, 110,000 cases and 7,000 deaths. And in this country that I'm speaking from this morning, 1.2 million cases of people suffering, 72,000 deaths. And I believe in the next week we will be approaching 100,000 deaths here in the United States. Even worse than this for me is the projections, as many experts are exploring the realities and the statistical models that suggest the growth will only surge as many places, many countries, many states in the U.S. say they want to start reopening. We will see a purge of many who will die and a surge of many who hopefully will survive. In the U.S., it's estimated we may be as much as 150,000 dead by the end of this month as things begin to escalate, and perhaps 300,000 in August. The Research Institute at Imperial College in London, unfortunately, projects the possibilities of 40 million deaths worldwide if we don't practice social distancing and use face masks and stay home and protect ourselves and our loved ones. So what needs to be done with this ugly, terrible tragedy? We can either cry, we can be depressed, or we can take a stand and move forward. And I'm hoping that you and I can join together and develop new and radical innovations that will help the world not only recover, but be better in the future. We have that possibility, as we've seen in the past, out of crises, out of war, out of civil unrest, out of other pandemics, out of earthquakes and mass destruction. People have rallied together to do more good. And I hope that we can redesign education to, in fact, have a much better future and reduce inequality and diminish human suffering and create new systems, new policies, new strategies that will help us move beyond where we're at now and invert and invent and mobilize to change for the better and have a new world of greater connectedness, where there's a collective sense of goodwill and widespread care for those around us. I hope you will take time to volunteer, if it's safe, to aid those struggling, to donate a little bit of your own personal funds, to love those who are depressed, to call those who are in sorrow. I've found great joy in just taking the simple time every day to email, phone, FaceTime, WhatsApp, or use other technologies to connect with people I know that I haven't seen in weeks or months or even years, and see how they're doing, and give them my support, and share my love, and tell them I'm praying for them. I hope all of us can do that to diminish the sorrow and suffering. We can use these innovations of education and economic transformation to confront head-on in the coming months the terrible gap between the world's haves and the world's have-nots. And I believe education, I believe microfinance, I believe worker-owned cooperatives are all technologies and methodologies that can be used specifically to help the nearly 1 billion people at the bottom of the pyramid who struggle living on less than $2 a day as they seek to feed their babies, to get health care for their parents and elderly people, to educate in their villages the next generation of youth. Because we have that possibility to take this radical change now as a vehicle to invert the status quo, turn it upside down, and become better in the process. We can do not only better, we can do great things. We can use our education strategies for a better future than the world has ever had, that includes not just reducing human suffering or giving young people a chance to learn to read and write, but to also fight inequality and become more aware of ways we can unite in purposes to reset the social structures we face, to regroup as a human race and move from resignation and fear and sorrow to seize the moral high ground for a better future. So let's work to improve society. Now's the time. We can make things better or we can make things worse. We're going to see increasing rates of illness and in some cases mental illness and depression and suicide. And I hope we can reach out to those around us, walking through our neighborhoods or our villages and using social distance, wearing masks to cover our faces, but reaching out to greet and party and collaborate, not in large groups, not in enclosed spaces, but to explore ways we can reduce suffering and cheer others up with our compassion, with our altruism. And in that process, our generosity of spirit and action will support others. I've looked at some of these videos from other countries, the masses who are getting tested, and I hope you have that chance to become tested and to verify that you're healthy, and if you have coronavirus or COVID-19, that you will have access to medical care, that your children will be blessed. I see many refugees moving to other places to get away from the congested cities and the mass poverty, and I hope those of us who have the means of a little money can support refugee and migrant organizations around the globe. I think as I've talked to some of my friends, they've said, when I see these problems on television, I want to look away. I change the television channel. I move off the Facebook pages. I want to ignore it. I close my eyes. I close my ears. I cover my ears. I don't want to see what's going on. And many are getting distracted with binge watching on television if they have that access, or social media. I hope instead you'll take time to see new innovations and strategies that are being shared. This little photo here with my friends are among 3,000 Haitians that after that gigantic earthquake destroyed the country of Haiti in the Caribbean in January 2010, they fled their country. They went to Central America. They came into Mexico. I met them there last year when I was on the border helping refugees from Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and I was so surprised to see this huge number of Haitians at a big food kitchen when we were serving meals to those who were migrants. And as I talked and listened to them, they described their struggles and their sorrows. I hope you will take time to listen to stories. I could not do very much except give them a little food, but I could listen. And we could share some of our happiness of the past and our hopes for the future. And if you have the chance to volunteer a little of your time and energy locally, I hope you will do that. And when this coronavirus diminishes and it's safer to travel, I encourage you to go to some place where you've seen the struggles of people in this terrible plight and spend some time and effort building relationships, serving those in need, joining with other NGOs, or creating your own. I've been blessed with fantastic MBA students, wonderful neighbors, college professors, entrepreneurs, wealthy donors, religious friends of my faith to have designed and launched 41 NGOs. We're now in 62 countries. And every one of those organizations right now is struggling and suffering in tragic ways. But I know they will get through it. And I hope we will all have the possibility to later do more to serve those in need. And that may include, for some of you watching this EURASIA conference, an ability or a capacity to travel and volunteer for a week or a month or 6 months to do good. We need to figure out methodologies for helping the poorest in the world who are now going to be in greater poverty because they're not getting good educations. This photo here of some friends in an orphanage and a school in Kathmandu in Nepal, where many villages were destroyed and schools destroyed. And I was blessed to go there and serve with friends as we helped to reopen schools and rebuild village centers and reestablish education systems. And my colleagues who have been working there now for 3 years have done so much, rebuilding orphanages, teaching teachers how to be more effective, bringing best practices, using Zoom classes, using other international opportunities to learn, such as the Khan Academy, or my friend Sakima Jacobi, who started schools for girls in Afghanistan when it was dangerous and when it was illegal. And she's learning and been very successful and won a few national and global recognitions for her outreach to help those who struggle in different parts of the globe. So let's study new and radical innovations in this time of coronavirus. And let's shift our values and our perspectives from me, from individuality, from my little home, my little house, my little family, my little tribe, to the larger community, the larger tribe, the neighborhood, the village. Many are struggling with the loss of employment, and as we face this struggle in the future, I think we're going to see more and more jobs being taken care of remotely. So I'm hoping my friends who are participating in this conference, who run education programs, who are directors of schools, who are university professors, or who are business people and entrepreneurs, will figure out how to adapt and how to accept and how to learn ways of being able to work from home, ways being able to create jobs for more people, instead of commuting from one's home to an office that is costly, that pollutes the air with public transportation or our cars, and also takes more money to do that, can figure out ways to provide our services, manage our enterprises, care for my accounting responsibilities or my marketing opportunities using the internet and all the technologies we now have. Because I know we can change the world and We need to do it not just at the macro level. I watch what my White House is doing in the United States, or what WHO, the World Health Organization, is doing based out of Geneva, or what the CDC is working on, or what the governments of Europe and leaders of countries like New Zealand, like Iceland, like South Korea, those innovative people who are doing amazing work to protect their countries from the coronavirus's ravages. But I'm hoping that you and I can work in our own family, in our own little neighborhood, in our own little village, so that when the coronavirus declines, we can reach out and help others. We can dig wells in the deserts. We can help rebuild mud schools in Mali and Senegal in West Africa. We can do microfinance in amazing places like Nicaragua and Brazil. We can help victims along the borders, the refugees fleeing Venezuela and stuck in the Amazon in the sweltering heat, or the Rohingya that have fled their country, that used to be called Burma, and are now struggling on the borders, sick and dying on the coastlines in Bangladesh. I've listed a few of the little works I've been a part of over the years, whether it's been in the Palestinian communities of Gaza, or leper colonies in India, or Maoris in New Zealand, or refugees in Kenya, villagers fleeing the troubled parts of Africa and now stuck in refugee camps from Somalia. We have so much suffering. We have great opportunities and blessings to reduce that suffering. Here are just a couple shots on the upper right from little stores created in Mombasa, little neighborhood markets, and clean water for the first time available in some of those communities and villages surrounding that country, of that area of Kenya, Mombasa. The upper left, my friends that fled Syria and Afghanistan, and I had the wonderful opportunity to work with them in Greece, in the refugee camps of Greece 2 years ago, where they'd lost everything and walked for weeks or months carrying their babies on their shoulders. These heroic people of Muslim faith, as well as others I've met from Christian faiths, from Hindus, from Buddhists, and other cultural and spiritual traditions. There's ways we can serve. Below on the left, I'm washing the feet, doing the humble service that my religion teaches, that Jesus showed up the world when he washed the feet of others. And here this poor man who's lost most of his fingers and one of his feet and toes on the other foot and part of his face asked me if I would help. So I put oils on his skin and rubbed it into the hard, tough hide. It was almost like the hide of an animal because of the terrible afflictions leprosy is that leprosy is causing this damage to his health and well-being. And for me, it was such a blessing to do that with him and many other people during several weeks there. You can do the same. Most of my viewers on this PowerPoint presentation, I assume, are a lot younger than me because I'm old. I am 78. Last year I traveled to 12 countries to work. The year before I volunteered in, I think, 21 countries or 22 countries. Because I've retired from teaching, I give lectures. I meet with NGOs as I travel. I help hire new staff, build new boards of directors, and I'm hoping you can do some of the same. We're all going to leave our homes after this coronavirus subsides. We're going to be more rested. I hope you'll be ready to go out in the world and do some good, because you'll have capabilities that I don't have. But I plan to get out there again, and I hope to build more schools in rural areas. I hope that while we're at home indoors, we can learn new skills for how to change the world, and we can raise money for groups that need some resources. And in the process, we can build better and newer healthcare systems afterward. We can become social justice warriors, not to sit in front of our homes with guns and hoarding food and toilet paper and crazy other things people have done to accumulate, but rather to share and become more interconnected with the rest of humanity. I'm hoping with the shuttering of schools, we can encourage and support greater homeschooling. There's tons of homeschooling lessons and materials online. And I've had some of my children and grandchildren practice homeschooling for years here in the United States. And I was kind of against it. I wanted to be out in the public school arena. But they've had good educations, and they're going to have wonderful college opportunities. And now with the coronavirus, many of my other children are doing homeschooling. So I want to encourage all of my friends worldwide to look online and find lessons and materials and music and activity and art and science and history and math lessons that you can use if you have children in your home, or that you yourself can use. And as many universities are now closed, and I think many will not reopen in the United States and parts of Europe and parts of Africa next fall, I hope that there will be new opportunities to use Zoom courses and Canvas and other higher education tools, as well as new and growing medical innovations where telemedicine can become our opportunity. I hope we can also break out of the polarization that you see in the angry leadership of Bolsonaro in Brazil or Duterte in the Philippines and other leaders like Modi in India, who are seeking this time of suffering to strengthen their power, to mobilize their military, and to change their constitutions, to give them greater dictatorial powers in their future. We need to create more democracy, not less. We need more innovation, not rigidity. We need to change the courses of all of our countries toward greater solidarity, toward a mix of left and right, but also a common political agenda. Less rich versus poor, more middle class. Less conflict between labor and business. And hopefully, instead of just taking care of myself and protecting my family, we may reach out to others and find the blessings that come through simple living, through communal living, like people did 100 years ago or 200 years ago. We can do it. We can lift people's spirits. And I believe, as we see, at least in my country, on the nightly news, these heroic doctors, nurses, delivery people, mail deliverers, researchers, micro-entrepreneurs, serving others, we can find a new reservoir of altruism and compassion and generosity of spirit in all of us, and we can develop new paradigms for economics, for education, for health, that will improve the planet, that the day will come when we will have clean air, not just during coronavirus, because of less pollution from automobiles and smokestacks from business and industry, but because we choose, we make a high priority to live more sustainably, to care for Mother Earth, to appreciate and clean our skies and rivers and earth to have a healthier future. We need to honor, by the way, those new heroes who are the utility workers, keeping our technology operational, the small business owners, the clerks in the stores as we have to go to purchase some food, as well as the healthcare people and the pharmacists and so forth. They are also mothers and fathers. They are religious leaders. They are grandparents. They are neighbors. Hopefully we appreciate them. Hopefully we do more than clap for them, but that we go out and stand in solidarity with them and encourage them and show them how much we appreciate, how much we're amazed and heartened with the ascendance of human goodness, their love, their service, as well as their expertise to all of us. So as I conclude, I want to just thank you for this opportunity to talk, to share some ideas, hopefully to motivate you to consider experiences as I look at the faces of these folks from India, from Mexico, from Indonesia, from parts of Africa, that you and I can see in them goodness and humanity and love and figure out ways that we can reach out and communicate in solidarity and share in simple ways, whether it's putting a balloon outside my home and a thank you to the healthcare workers in my neighborhood, or as my wife and I did last week, we went to some of our neighbors with colored chalk. We didn't talk to any face to face. We just wrote big love letters of appreciation and drew hearts and told them how much we appreciate them. We teach some young children in our neighborhood once a week, but we're not doing it now. We went to their homes and took little letters of love and appreciation and some candy and wrote on the chalk outside their houses how much we appreciate them. And if nothing else, maybe you can do what I've been doing, which is email, call, text loved ones, including people you haven't seen for a long time. I've done that now with about 500 people all over the world. And some have responded and many have not. And many probably don't have access to the internet from where they're living. But someday they will see that. Someday they will know of my appreciation for them. I hope we can all make this call for action to do some good. If you want to email me, here's how to do so. If you want to send me a text, you can find that through my website. If you want to read more about ways you can get involved in doing things, not for me, but for others, I have a bunch of my NGOs and others online. And I hope we can conclude with the words of the great Mahatma Gandhi, who said, if we don't like things, if we're suffering, if we're slaves, if we're oppressed, he said, you must be the change you wish to see in the world. Thank you, and may you all be blessed.